Welcome, everybody. We're so happy you could join us. I guess it's this afternoon now for most of us. We'd like to start with a prayer and a land acknowledgement, then I'll introduce our special guest today.
Okay, our prayer today is, grant us, Lord God, a vision of your world as your love would have it, a world where the weak are protected and none go hungry or poor, a world where the riches of creation are shared and everyone can enjoy them, a world where different races and cultures live in harmony and mutual respect, a world where peace is built with justice and justice is guided by love. Give us the inspiration and courage to build it. Through Christ, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
And now I'd like to read a land acknowledgement from the sisters, Franciscan sisters. FSPA acknowledges that St. Rose Convent occupies the unceded ancestral and traditional land of Indigenous peoples. We understand that our organization and our city were founded upon the exclusion and erasures of many Indigenous peoples, and we vow to work towards dismantling the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. But we realize that saying this only has meaning when coupled with the development of authentic relationships and sustained action. We therefore pledge to move beyond mere words and to develop programs, policies, and actions that fully embody our commitment to Indigenous rights and cultural equity. We affirm Indigenous sovereignty and will work to hold ourselves accountable to the needs of our Indigenous brothers and sisters.
All right, thank you, Charlotte. Okay, welcome. Let's see, maybe a couple ground rule issues before we do the introduction. If you're on Zoom, we'd ask you to mute yourself for the presentation. And if you'd like to ask questions at any time, put them in chat. Or if you're in one of the rooms, if you're in the room there with Beth, you can give her your question. And we'll either address the questions as we go if there's a good breaking point, or we'll address them, we'll have time at the end. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Dr. Amaha Sellassie. Amaha is Associate Professor of Sociology and Director for Center for Applied Social Issues at Sinclair Community College in Dayton, Ohio. He is a founding member of the Gem City Market, which is a community-led effort that addresses food apartheid and disinvestment in West Dayton. He's dedicated his life to building bridges of trust, healing historical wounds, and harnessing the gifts and talent of every human being as we press toward a just and equitable society. He's been described as a peace builder, a social healer, a freedom fighter, and a lover of humanity. And it's been my pleasure to work with Amaha a little bit, and that's exactly how I find him myself. And one of the things that Amaha is often asked to do is share the Gem City story with other cities, other communities. And occasionally I get to sit in on those sessions. And after they're done, I often joke with Amaha, I can't wait till he runs for office so I can vote for him. Or if he starts a church, I'm going to be a regular attendee. So my pleasure to welcome Amaha and turn it over to him.
Hi, greetings, everybody. Yeah, so thankful to be here. And I want to shout out Tim as well, for the invitation, and also because he's been a pivotal piece of the Gem City Market story, you know, and I really appreciate all he's done to help us get where we are today. It's interesting. We were talking before we came on that there was a $100,000 donation by Sister Precious Blood, so another nun order that helps us to provide memberships and a food program for those at lower socioeconomic status. So, you know what? Like seeing that prayer really inspired me. And I'm thankful for the land acknowledgement in that prayer, because to me, you know, it spoke to the underlying thing of the single garment of destiny, right? That King talks about, or, you know, like what is the nature of the body of Christ, right? Like what did Christ do at the cross? And the more we acknowledge our interdependence, you know, the foot can't live without the hand and the hand can't live without the elbow, you know, and we start using those thoughts to guide how we treat each other, you know, and acknowledge the dignity of us all, then that's how we leverage our gifts and talents that, you know, God has so freely given to us all. And so like that prayer really inspired me. Matter of fact, I took a picture when we were doing it, because I want to make sure I caught it, you know, and especially that last part where it said the courage, you know, because to me, like, the story of the Gem City Market is you know, it's particular to Dayton, but it's really a nationwide phenomenon, you know, and probably global to a certain extent as well. And so to me, it comes down to the question of what is community, and how are we living deeper into community in areas that have been intentionally underdeveloped, right? So I think that's kind of what the story is. So I wanted to start with this brief video to kind of paint some of the context, and then we'll go a little bit deeper into the market and some of the underlying things that happen on a national level when we use the Gem City Market as an example. So
residents say enough is enough. With another grocery gone, it's leaving an even bigger gap in one of the worst food deserts in the state of Ohio.
Before it burned down, Food for Less was one of the only grocery stores in the area. Concerns the area has become a food desert have persisted since the fire.
But even as we enter into 2018, we find that a number of urban areas are suffering from almost food drought.
To be in the top 12, considered a food desert, you know, how were we proactive?
It's rather disturbing, you know, that you have to travel so far to get food for your family. It was a time where me and my husband didn't have a vehicle and we had to catch the bus. And with kids and bringing bags back, and I mean, it's, you know, it was hard, but I mean, you do what you have to do for your family.
The Kroger that used to be on Gettysburg was our #1 place to get groceries. As of now, that is gone. For those people that live in that community who have nowhere to get just the simple things just to feed their families.
Access to fresh quality food is a human right, and a lot of residents of West Dayton are not able to enjoy that right. People are dependent on these corner stores and dollar stores. It just really makes me upset, you know what I mean? You gotta do what you gotta do to survive, and I totally get it, but they shouldn't have to make that choice.
I mean, how can Dayton be the 5th hungriest city in the country? There's no way, because we had all of these programs 25 years ago that worked. We were a hunger-free community. But then when you research it and take a look at it, you find out, well, we lost 40,000 manufacturing jobs, and that really put us in the hole.
I think that this is going to be the turning point for Dayton. I think that this project shows the city that there is an answer, that there is hope, that there are people who care, but it also teaches them that things don't have to be that way.
Gem City is owned by the people here, and once we build this grocery store, it's not going anyplace. It's staying here. You know, this is the first step in really becoming hunger-free, and it's exciting. We're gonna have some fun with this.
Thank you so much for being out here today. It's great to see so many members of the community coming out as we continue our progress towards making the Gem City market.
Everyone can come and take their pad, and on their card, circle where you have identified.
This is very important because not one person is doing it, not two person is doing it. We are all doing it.
Community leaders tell me they're excited with a nervous anticipation here on Salem Avenue at the site of the future Gem City Market. Now,
after years of planning and raising more than $4 million, officials broke ground on the project. Officials say it's an important addition to the west side of the city, considering there is not another grocery store in that area.
Organizers say there's more hard work ahead. They'll refocus on demolition, construction, permitting, then opening, but their sights are set on the future.
It makes my heart smile. It's really changed my life. Like, it's given me a new sense of purpose. I feel invigorated. I feel valued.
We can look and say, like, yeah, this is the turning point. You know what I mean? We did it here, why can't we do it at other places? You know what I mean? So even just knowing what we can do and really stretching out, you know what I mean, and to see what we're capable of doing together that we couldn't do by ourselves.
It's really a growing place, and I love it. It's my city, and I want to see it grow.
When it's yours, you're going to make sure that you teach your children, you teach your neighbors. It will be a generation to come.
You know, it's almost overwhelming that it's something that's great coming to our city, and we can really reap the benefits from it.
To our market.
Welcome to our market.
Welcome to our market.
Welcome
to our market.
Welcome to our market.
Welcome to our market.
Welcome to our market.
Welcome to our market.
Welcome to our store.
Welcome to the Gem City Market.
Greetings. Welcome to our market.
Welcome to our market.
Welcome to our market. Welcome to our market.
Okay. You guys able to hear that? Or okay, good. So yeah, so that kind of shows you a little bit of the Gem City Market, and I think as you can see, like I think it's a story of resilience, right, and how a community comes together. And kind of going off of the prayer of earlier, I think so. Part of it was a community realizing its ability to change its lived environment, which we call collective hope, right? Because hope comes from knowing that we have the ability to make change, and then also being rooted in love, right? Like our key was like how we build deep relationships in our community through the process and heal some of the divisions in our city. Because we're one of the most hyper segregated cities in the country, meaning that we got extreme segregation in our area, which we'll look into. So I created this little PowerPoint. Honestly, let me share it. Okay. Okay. I thought we are the ones we've been waiting for, food apartheid and community-led solutions. That kind of came from this quote from Ella Baker, where she talked about strong people don't need strong leaders, right? So how we're building capacity in the community to deal with our own issues. I wanted to look at a little bit about like health equity. So health equity, oftentimes when we think of health, you know, we limit it to, you know, diabetes or, you know, arthritis or asthma, cancer, you know, but like health is actually a broader concept when we're looking at like, you know, total quality of life. And health equity is looking at how to make it, you know, fair and just. And so it's eliminating discrimination, you know, equal pay, education, housing, and really looking at deep power imbalances, right? Like how do we balance out power within the communities so that everybody has access to the healthiest life possible. Stop. There it goes. So I wanted to briefly talk about what power is. You know, power is, you know, the ability to act or to achieve a purpose. And you know, I like to look at power as also like the ability to transform our lived environment. Key to power is how power creates these ideas that then influence or inform how we communicate and interact with each other, right? So like when we're talking about race, you know, race is something that human beings made up. And then they gave meanings that said that, you know, one race is superior than others. And therefore, you know, if I am of, if every race that is non-white, at one point was questioned if they were human, but deserves, you know, less opportunity, less access. So we create these things where we create concentrated advantage or we pool advantage towards one race, you know, same with gender, class, age, and sexual orientation. And so, so part of understanding our community makeup is like how this idea of race then influenced and shapes our lived environments in America. So to look at that, I think we got to look at like what structures, or meaning how are the arrangements of resources and institutions in the community? What informs how they relate to each other, and what informs how they act, right? And so structure equals ideology plus resources. So I have the idea, like in this example, is that, you know, white is superior, right? And then I add my resources to make that happen, right? So I pool resources in one area, I disinvest in communities of color, and then we get this note. Then, like in the material world, we get this to this place where race seems like it actually exists, but it doesn't exist, right? And that's kind of paradox, that it's an idea, but because we act it out, it has lived consequences, right? And I think that's important, right? Because I think part of the dismantling that I heard mentioned earlier, it comes by living into a different ideology. You know, Christ is the chief cornerstone, you know, the stone that the builder refused became the headstone of the corner, right? So it's grace, right? It's that strength to love that has been denied on the earth, right? And so like how we continue to live in that through our relationships, one with another, to acknowledge everybody's humanity, dignity, and worth, not just by our interactions, but how we build, you know, the policies, the structures, and the systems to also declare it as well. Because structures are not neutral, you know, like every structure has these ideas that are built into it, you know. Sometimes it sticks for some reason. Okay, I'm gonna go back one. Okay, so when we're looking at society, our society is arranged around what they call the social determinants of health, or like these, they're known as institutions. These institutions govern how our society functions. So we have education, economic, transportation, food, housing, justice, healthcare, and communications. And they're each one like string of a web or string in a system, but the key thing is that they all interact with each other. So education is connected to housing, right? Because since we pay, a lot of schools are funded through property taxes. If the less property tax in the area, less money that goes to the public school system, which then, you know, lessens the chances for access to, you know, extracurricular activities, college prep classes, you know, the latest computers, textbooks, et cetera, right? And it also connects to food, because oftentimes kids that are coming from underdeveloped areas, they might not have access to food from their homes. And so they're coming to school, which impacts their ability to concentrate, all of these things. And so they're all interdependent together. And these are known as the social determinants of health. And because of how we shape, or the ideas we have around gender, race, and class, you know, in particular, like they place us in different parts inside of the hierarchies in America, and they work interdependently. So that's where oftentimes, especially Black women, because we live in a society that favors men, some will say patriarchal, that being a woman gives her a wind in her face instead of a wind in her back. Like I like to explain inequalities as like they're not direct, but they have an impact by either giving a little boost of wind in our back or a boost of wind in our face. So for a Black woman, her race counts against her and her gender counts against her. So it's like this downward pressure that, you know, it's not impossible to advance, but there's more obstacles they have to face. So like, how do we build society that doesn't have this notion of wind? And this leads to structural violence, right? So how our communities are arranged impacts our health, right? Like the social determinants of health is like how our communities are arranged. And when they're arranged in a way where you have lack of access to multiple things, it literally impedes, it has health impacts, right? And they call it the avoidable gap because it's simply a lack of willingness in how we're organizing our communities, but it impacts, education, health, employment, access to, asthma, so like, well, actually, I'll get into that in a second. Okay, so, and hypersurrogation, this is the key point. So hypersurrogation is a result of redlining, which we're gonna see in a second, where you pool resources in certain communities. But there's a high correlation between areas that have segregation that now have high levels of poverty. And so it's key to it's key to stratification on multiple fronts. And a lot of people will say that like segregation itself is the structural linchpin and the apparatus for all other structural inequalities. When we're looking at infant mortality rates, mass incarceration, the quality of schools, Black homicide, premature death, meaning that someone with a body of someone that is 40 years old, but has like a body of a 50 or 55-year-old and has like these premature conditions due to the lived environment that they are in, and lack of access to fresh fruits and vegetables, which we're going to talk about today. What's the weathering effect? I'm gonna skip that. Here are some of the health effects that come from segregation: diabetes, preterm deaths, infant mortality, hypertension, excess death, asthma, and obesity. Okay, so I know you're probably wondering, what does all this have to do with the Gem City market? Okay, so this is a map of Dayton from like 1934, I want to say maybe 36, and this is a redlining map, right? And so the way redlining worked was this was a map developed by banks to determine how they're going to lend resources in the community or even invest in communities. So areas that were green were known as safe to invest, then blue, then yellow, then red. And so areas that were white were considered green, and then blue and yellow were immigrant communities, and red was Black. I'm gonna pause for a second. I'm gonna ask a question real quick if I can. Let me see. Come back over here. Stop my share. Raise your hand. You can just raise your hand like this, or you can press on screen if you want to. If you would consider yourself white, raise your hand. Okay. You can put them down. Thank you. And I got one more question. If you have Jewish, Italian, Irish, Polish, we'll go with those. In your background, raise your hand again. Okay, so everybody that raised your hand the second time, you are actually newly white, right? Because remember, white is not, it's not about skin color, right? It's a they call it social construct. It's a made up idea. And so back at the time of these maps, you would have probably been in the yellow and the blue categories. Like you wouldn't have made it to the green categories, right? That was reserved for a certain type of white that, stem from the Aryan mountains, and like they have all these things, right? And so like there's all kind of books of how like the Irish community became white they changed their names, they got rid of, like, say, O'Malley, sometimes they had to change their religion, right? Because at that time Catholicism was seen as too close of a connection to the papacy. So they would on their process to become white, they would change their culture and different things, and it's like to get this whitening process, right? So I'm making this point I'm trying to make this point because I think when we're talking about like how these things work, it was not based about skin color, it was based about an idea, right? And even if you are a person of color, you can actually gain benefits the more you adopt that idea, right? And so I'm kind of make sure I want to try to situate us in this and in the history. Are there any questions before I go forward? I talk super fast, so.
Okay. There's nothing in the chat yet.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right, so let me go back to the presentation. Okay, so now we have these redlining maps. Okay, so green area is known as Oakwood. Here is this river named Miami River, right? That separated the city. And so you see, we have a little bit of red on both sides. And like where we put the market is right in here. It was like a Black and a Jewish neighborhood back in the day. So the way redlining worked in Dayton is that all African Americans were forced to live on the west side of Dayton. And to this day, 98% of all African Americans that live in Dayton, they live on the west side, this side over here. So I wanted to pay real close attention to the map. Like, let's look at the basic pattern, right? We got this river, the red around the river, the green right here. So now we're going to look at W.E.B. Du Bois. Some will say Du Bois. He was the first African American PhD. He said that the problem of the 21st century is going to be the problem of the color line, right? So he wrote this late 1800s, and you know, America coming off of the Civil War, coming off of slavery. Okay, so how are we going to deal with this race issue? You know, and because race was seen as like a human, not human thing, it added this next layer that made it difficult to unpack, right? If it was just a thing about, you know, rights or something like that, it would have been easier to dismantle once it was over. But there was these deep-seated ideas that was based in artificial science. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Okay, so what we see is that so here's this map again. This is a new map. It came out in like 2015, 16. And this measures opportunity. And opportunity we call conditions favorable for the attainment of a goal. So it's looking at health, housing, transportation, and education. So areas that are white are low and very low in opportunity. Then you have blue to green, blue being very high, right? So does anybody see, and you can just say it out loud, I can't see anybody right now. What's the PowerPoint up? Does anybody see any correlation between these two maps? Between the green areas and the dark blue and the red and the white areas on this map? Does anybody see a pattern? You can just shout it out.
The white and red pattern.
Yeah. So the white and red are the same, right? And so what we're seeing is that the area, the color line has now translated as an opportunity line, right? So the areas that were red were disinvested, you know, for 20, 30 years, you know, like lack of investment, lack of fixing up properties, you know, like concentrated disadvantage will put in that area to put resources in these green areas. So now the areas that were green, you know, 30, 40, 50 years later, you know, now are the areas where, you know, prime real estate, this, that, and other. And these white areas are the areas that have been disinvested and underdeveloped. And so now they lack access to a lot of basic things. And they're ripe for gentrification. I don't know if you got to talk about that at all, but like they make them ripe for gentrification. Okay, so when we were building the market, this area that we talked about, there was 40,000 residents and no grocery store. I'm gonna skip this stuff. But you can look at life expectancies in areas that's low to high. There's a 6-year difference in life expectancy. And why this is important is that zip codes determine your life expectancy, right? And so where you live matters, right? The access to the resources around you matters. It literally impedes your health. And we're looking at the whole county. It's like a 12-year difference just by where you live, everything else being equal. You know, you can see cancer rates a lot higher, heart disease. And this would be an interesting one. Why do you think it's low? It's 19 here for health insurance, then it jumps to 21 and then it goes down. Like why does this not fit the same pattern as the other ones? Anybody got any idea? Actually, I'll just tell you, but it's because this qualifies for subsidy. They don't need subsidy, but here's what they call that middle gap, right? Where they call it a cliff. So you make just enough to be out of this category, but like say like $100 is a cutoff to receive subsidy. You make $100 and 1 penny, right? So you don't make enough to qualify here anymore, but you're not making enough to make it to the other side. So you get stuck in this gap where you don't qualify for any assistance, but don't make enough money to get your own health insurance. And so you're stuck in the middle. They call that the cliff. So a lot of people, if they don't make enough money to jump all the way over to the other side, they will turn down raises and turn down jobs because, you know, the way we set up, instead of, you know, taking benefits away slowly as you increase your salary, we say it's like an all or nothing scenario. Okay. So this led us to, like, we had 40,000 residents and no grocery store. So we decided that we needed to act. And this is where I think a story of our self-reliance comes in, knowing that, you know, we were the ones that we were waiting for, right? And so the Kroger closed, as the video showed, the Aldi's closed. Our community was full of dollar stores. So communities, people were having to travel 2 buses to get to the grocery store, like you saw our brother James in the video, in the rain. And he had to take 2 buses back. So you're looking at about a 3-hour bus ride just to get to the grocery store. And then you got to factor in, if I got a big family, do I bring multiple people with me, or do I make multiple trips? So like food access was this whole next issue. And, you know, if I'm working 2 jobs, I don't have time, I'll just go to the dollar store. And then, you know, once in a while, that's not a big deal. But if my main shopping is out of the dollar store, or a Dollar General, because of the high level of canned food, high fructose corn syrup, salt, right? My health is going to deteriorate, you know, because you can't get fresh fruits and vegetables in a dollar. Some dollar stores are starting to do it now, but, you know, as a whole, you can't, right? So this is the notion of a food desert. I'm not sure if you guys have heard that before, but it's, you know, within a 1-mile radius, where there's 200% below the poverty line, at least 40% of residents with a lower income, that you have lack of access to fresh fruits and vegetables. I actually don't like the term food desert because it implies it's natural. But when we go back to the slides of, you know, redlining and all these things, we see that those were man-made decisions, right? So I like to use the word food apartheid. And I use that because instead of it being a natural phenomenon, like, oh my goodness, we live in a food desert, you know, what can I do? Food apartheid acknowledges that it was man-made systems that has created the underdevelopment. And that gives us hope, right? Because if we're in something that was man-made, then we have the ability to unmake it, right? We have the ability to come together as a community, leverage our gifts and talents towards making the community that we want to work, live, and play in. And that gives us hope, right? So I like to use language that keeps, you know, power in the hands of people, you know, through the grace of God. So like you said, infant rates, and also, like, not having us bringing in a store also created economic revitalization as well, or you know, we're hoping to. Like, we created high quality jobs, and you know, most of our, I think we have close to we're mid-20s workers, high-paying jobs, and a lot of people live within the trade area, like right around the market. So we came together, we started organizing. This was actually our first community meeting right here. I don't know what we're voting on. This is a picture of our trade area. Median income, 28,000, 77% African American, 33% has SNAP, food assistance. And here's a picture of us when we were, it looks like our groundbreaking. And then here's another picture of our groundbreaking. This is our mayor, Ambassador Hall, and city commissioner. And then here's our grand opening of the market. We opened up in May. And here's a picture inside the market. And one of the most amazing things for me has been one of the people in the video, they mentioned how we accepted, and for a long time, our community just accepted that we had to, shop outside of our city to get groceries, and it really boggled my own mind to see like how much we accepted things that are kind of unacceptable, right? And so now, like the community, we expect more, and we're also willing to do the work, right? To do it. We're not just waiting for people to hand us stuff, right? And so, so thoughts, question. I know I talk a lot. Let's open up for questions, or I can go down some more rabbit holes.
There's definitely time for questions if anybody has any. Amaha, I don't know if you have done any work, research on land ownership among African Americans, and maybe you could speak to that a little bit if you have something to share there.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of numbers on it, right? But actually, Black land ownership is like losing a lot of land every year. That like, man, I'm gonna say it's like millions of acres a year. It's some astronomical number that especially down south that Black community is losing, which has a huge impact on our ability to sustain ourselves. And so a lot of African Americans right now are trying to pull resources together to try to get land because of that issue.
Okay, we're now starting to get some questions. So okay. I'll read you the first one. I live in a food apartheid area, and I work for a sustainable farm. What is some advice you can give on how we can give away food in a dignified manner? What is some advice you can give on how we give away food in a dignified manner?
I love that question, especially the key on how to give it away in a dignified manner. And congratulations on working on a sustainable farm. I think bringing food where the people are. If you want to set up some kind of like farmers market or a way for people to get some food, or even teaching them how to do little community gardens, if they don't know how, or how to share resources and expertise. I know like here, some stuff comes to the local food bank and goes out, but I love our food bank. Does amazing work, but I like the building the relationships too, and so how you build relationships with the residents that are living in the food apartment, which may be yourself as well. and sharing food that way, or even doing like trades or something like that. Like I think I love your question. Is how to do it in a dignified way. I think it's important, right? Like I'm real big on like how to acknowledge the dignity of everybody. So I really appreciate that.
So there's a couple more. One's about how long the market's been going, but it's been going since May of this year.
Yeah, May. It's a couple months.
And then the next one is, what kind of resistance was there in Dayton for your effort? Did you?
Yeah, good thanks. Oh yeah. We definitely, if I was to use a biblical analogy, I would say Nehemiah, right? Because there's a time where Nehemiah is building the wall with one hand and he's like fighting the battle with the other hand, right? And so, yeah, I mean, so I think that is an amazing question, because it hits to some of the underlying issues that you have in areas that's been underdeveloped. And I think one of the key things is the overpromise and the underdelivery. Like how many times have people come together and say they're going to do something either for the community or with the community, and they don't do it, that we got like this level of like trauma and these walls built up, right? So when we first started, everything from, oh, they're going to steal the money, to like, this is a pipe dream, which I can't blame them on the pipe dream, because the reality is the group that came together, including myself in this market, we had absolutely no grocery store experience other than shopping. You know what I mean? So having a little skepticism in the beginning, I think was good community diligence, right? But over time, we put a survey out and we asked the community, like, would people be interested in a grocery store? Is it something that we would need? And if we did it, would people shop there? And once we got the community to say that, yes, this is something that we want, then we actually went underground for like 2 years. And that's when we connected with Tim and different people. Like we brought in experts to like teach us the grocery store industry and this, that, and other. And then we came back out in 2017 with a plan, and we were organized and we started to go from there. So I think building trust, some of the community they wanted to make sure like who is it being built for? Like is this market a key to gentrify the area and things like that? So we often say that movements move on the speed of trust, right? And so like we're highly relational, and we build the deep relationships that can help us withstand the obstacles, so yeah, so we definitely had some challenges, still do, but we're working through them. And I think the key is for the community to feel that it's theirs, and not just feel like semantically, but like really no, like we did this together and we're going to continue to birth and co-create together. Great questions.
We got a couple more. So this one is, what are your thoughts on the conflicts between food affordability and the injustices that go with growing and harvesting cheap food?
Boy, if I had an answer to that, I'd be a Nobel Peace Prize winner. But like, it's a hard scenario, right? Because it's like when we're looking at the whole food system, we want everybody to have good jobs. You know what I mean? Like we don't want to exploit people in the process. And how do you build that into a system and still have affordable products? Because I teach at a college, and I tell my students always that like really, as a society, we subsidize Walmart, right? Like Walmart model is that, they sell things cheaply because most of their workers are on government assistance, right? So it's like they pay their workers lower, we subsidize them, and in return, we get products at a cheap price, right? And so, yeah, it's a challenging one. I think it's finding a balance. I think it's educating the community on like how food prices work, and trying to, it's like there's got to be a balance somewhere, right, where it's like people aren't being exploited to get food to our table, and it's a hard one. I appreciate the question, and it's one I struggle with and will continue to struggle with. I would love to hear your ideas on it too, actually. And what did you do to make people, all type people feel welcome in the store? Okay, I feel the key to that was participation, right? Like we didn't do something for the community, we did something with the community. So when it came to our mission statement, you know, I remember vividly, matter of fact, there might have been one picture in this slide, I might take it out, but you know, we had 150, 180 people gathered and we broke up into different rooms and we co-created our mission statement together as a community. Our name came from community, you know. Our architectural design. So we had the architect had this basic design. Then our architect spent like a couple months going to community events, sitting up in the library, allowing people the chance to you know, engage and add things. Like one of my biggest ones I always tell is that we had at first only one bathroom, and it was right next to the clinic. And actually, it was in the front of the store. And so I remember one woman asked one day, she was like, "So I gotta take my urine sample and walk across the market to get to the clinic." And we're like, "Oh, didn't think about that." So then we put in a bathroom, another set of bathrooms right by the health clinic, right? And so So now I look at the market and I see all these community decisions in it. It's embedded in it. And that's part of how you create that sense of belonging, right? That people see their ideas being implemented, right? That their ideas had value, you know? And I think the key is creating that sense of belonging amongst everybody, that everybody feels welcome, that is their store. And, you know, and it's still a process, you know what I mean? There's still, you know, we got a good segment of the community, but there's still parts that that don't feel that the store is for them. For, you know, some people, they live a little bit further out and they don't want to take the food that's supposed to be going in it, but we don't know, we need your money to help keep the thing going, right? And then some that are that live you know, closer to it, you know, they're still questioning, you know, who is it made for, you know, 5-10 years from now. So yeah, it's all things that we're working through.
Okay, I think we are about at the end of our time, and I don't see any new questions, Amaha. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. And I think people can now see why I'm going to vote for you, and I'm going to go to your church when you get it started. So
it is. I appreciate that. Well, I'll come to yours, right? So.
So we're gonna close with a prayer today. And thank you everybody for joining us today. Beth, are we going to talk about? I don't think we're going to talk about next month. So everybody, please pay attention to your emails to see who's going to join us next month. I don't have that information with me here. So
if I could say one thing in closing, that sure. Like there's a Bible verse where it says faith worketh by love, and you know, I want to say I'm a believer. That's something that I know and I bear a witness for myself, right? Because the more that I seek to transform my heart and to walk in love, then I know the ideas that are being generated are ideas rooted in love. And then that gives me the faith that like they're achievable, you know? And so I press into them and I walk them out, you know, individually and with the community. And that's been like my biggest breakthrough of just knowing like the power of walking in love and how that enables us to, you know, faith without works is dead, right? So, yeah, that's something I wanted to share to encourage everybody with the great work that you're doing, you know?
Yeah, thank you, Amaha, for that. And geez, now I don't know if we need a closing prayer. You did such a good job with that, but we'll have it nonetheless. And Beth just sent me a chat, and next month we have Barbara Fraser, who is the editor of Earthbeat with National Catholic Reporter. And I think a lot of you read Barbara's work. So it's a great joy that we're having her come to visit with us. She'll be talking about the UN Climate Summit and community involvement, which we've talked quite a bit about today with Amaha as well. community involvement. And it's the same link as you used today. And Charlotte's going to close us with a prayer.
Okay. Actually, our closing prayer is a poem by Maya Angelou, renowned U.S. poet and civil rights activist who died in 2014. And this poetry is famous for its intimate description of freedom and the role of personal voice as a true element of it. It's called I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. The free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wings in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with fearful trill of the things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn-bright lawn as he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his time is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
we
you.
really appreciate it. Hope to see everybody next month. Even you, Amaha, you can come back next month if you want to.